We're going to get started with this story coming out of Taiwan. Now, you guys know we've talked about this a couple of times on the show. Danny Hyphon came on to discuss the situation that's happening in reference to China and Taiwan. So I'm not going to go through that whole spiel again, but basically, long story short, Taiwan wants independence. Now, what's important about this story in particular is that the U.S. has decided to approve weapons to Taiwan. Now, why is this controversial? There's a couple of things that are happening here. Number one, you have to remember that Taiwan is a part of China. I will say that multiple times tonight to get that through people's head. Taiwan is a part of China. And we'll talk a little bit about that one China policy as we go further on as well. So just keep that in mind. Taiwan technically is not considered to be a sovereign nation. There are a couple of countries in the world that do consider it to be a sovereign nation, but the majority do not. Now, what is a sovereign nation? Let's go ahead and get into that first before I show you the clip. A sovereign nation is a nation that has one centralized government that has the power to govern a specific geographic area. Under the definition set by international law, a sovereign nation has a defined territory with just one government. These nations have a permanent population and can enter into relations with other sovereign countries. While most major sovereign nations are well known throughout the world, many smaller or less prominent nations are relatively unknown countries. Now, again, as I told you, some countries, I think there's like 5 countries that do consider Taiwan to be a sovereign nation, but the majority of the countries in the world do not consider Taiwan to be a sovereign nation because Taiwan is part of China. And then there's that issue again with one centralized government, one government, specific geographic area, etc. Now, that being said, because there is some disagreement when it comes to Taiwan and this sovereign nation idea, they are listed as one of the countries that is disputed. So there's a whole list here. It says 15 United Nations states whose sovereignty is disputed. And you'll see a couple of them that you may, obviously China is going to be here, of course, because of the Taiwan situation. You'll also see Kosovo, right? South Korea. And then number 14 is Taiwan. It says Taiwan, Republic of China, is claimed by mainland China, the People's Republic of China. As of 2019, only 14 UN nations have recognized Taiwan as a sovereign nation, largely due to China's interference. Now, again, you have to think about the way that this is worded because it says China's interference, but I just explained to you that Taiwan is a part of China. So it gets a little murky here. Like, it bothers me when people say China may invade Taiwan because I'm like, how can you invade something that already belongs to you? So it bothers me when I hear that talking point, but that is how it is being described. Now, the U.S. government has decided to approve, and this came from Joe Biden, to approve to send weapons to Taiwan. Why is that problematic? Number one, because of this issue about whether or not they're considered to be a sovereign nation, which I do not consider them to be a sovereign nation based on that definition. But two, there's also this issue of taunting. Obviously, if the U.S. government approves to send weapons to Taiwan, obviously you are basically taunting China. You are sending a message. You don't have to say it verbally, but if you're sending people weapons, obviously you are sending a message to their adversary. I want to go ahead and get into that clip here. I just want to make sure I got the right one. Yes, this clip here where it says, the U.S. approves first ever military aid to Taiwan. Let's go ahead and get into this.
Now, the Biden administration has approved funding for the first ever transfer of U.S. military equipment to Taiwan under a program typically saved for sovereign nations. The newest development in continued U.S. support for Taiwan has drawn an angry response from China, which claims the self-governing island of Taiwan is its own. And China's defense ministry also lashed out at the sale, saying Chinese military will take all necessary measures to absolutely counter this. And U.S. officials were quick to say that the provision of...
Let's pause here because she's talking kind of fast. I just want to go back to this part here about China's response. And this is what I was warning you about.
U.S. support for Taiwan has drawn an angry response from China, which claims the self-governing island of Taiwan is its own. And China's defense ministry also lashed out at the sale, saying Chinese military will take all necessary measures to absolutely counter this. And U.S. officials were quick to say...
Okay, that part right there, she needs to pause in between her statements here. That part right there where the response from China has already been that they will respond to counter this decision from the U.S. government. So essentially, the U.S. government choosing to make this decision is escalating tensions between China and Taiwan and the United States. Why are we poking the bear? The U.S. government, in my opinion, should completely stay out of this. Completely stay out of this. We should have never approved to send Taiwan weapons. We're trying to escalate tension between China and Taiwan and the U.S. and China. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to go to war with China. I don't think we would win. So this is a scary situation. Joe Biden is still on his first term. We are already in multiple conflicts. Even when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, we're sending weapons to Ukraine, billions and billions of dollars going out the door. This is what the Biden administration has brought us to. This is where we're at now. And now they're sending weapons to Taiwan. Are they insane? He is only on his first term. So she just told you that China said they are going to counter this. Let's continue with the video.
That the provision of FMF, or foreign military financing funding, to Taiwan did not represent a change in policy. It should be noted that earlier US would sale was in fact involved in a sale of weapons and not in a funding. And this is the first time that there will be military aid provided by the United States to Taiwan.
You hear this? The first time the US, the weapons will be literally provided to Taiwan by the United States. Again, this is making a lot of news, not just because of the conflict with China and Taiwan, but also because the US is sending weapons to a nation that is not a sovereign nation. So this is a big deal. We have to think about that one China policy. Again, Taiwan is a part of China. It's not a separate thing. And it's really frustrating to me that we are already at this point. When we talk about foreign policy, when we talk about escalating tensions and conflicts around the world, this is where the Biden administration has brought us. So I don't care. Like when people say this lesser of two evils, lesser of what evil? Let's continue.
Position the Chinese are sure to disagree with. The only other time the US provided a non-nation state with military assistance under FMF was to the African Union, which, as we all know, is an organization of sovereign states based in Ethiopia. And let's try and get in a sense of perspective in terms of what these developments mean. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Mr. Lai Chang, who's the director of the Department of Chinese Affairs in Taiwan Executive Board, and he's also the director of Foreign Policy. Many thanks to you, Mr. Chang, for joining in. Now, usually, weapons supply to Taiwan has been done on a trade basis rather than direct aid. When we say US has approved the first ever military aid to Taiwan, how significant is the decision and what is the difference between what is being done now and what was being done earlier in terms of weapons sale to Taiwan is concerned?
I think the President Biden authorized the foreign military financing for Taiwan. That is basically the first time that this program has been adopted to use for the military support for Taiwan. In the past, it was always foreign military sale. So Taiwan pay and get the weapon from the United States. But this time, it is a very different program. The sale of the weapon to Taiwan is actually paid by the U.S. taxpayers.
Pause. That's the part I wanted you to hear. We're going to play this part one more time because this is going to show you again why you need to be upset.
This time, it is a very different program. The sale of the weapon to Taiwan is actually paid by the U.S. taxpayers.
The weapon sales for Taiwan is paid by the U.S. taxpayers. We're paying for this, you guys. We have no say-so in how our tax dollars are used in this country. And now our tax dollars are being paid to send weapons to Taiwan. Do you agree with that? Are you okay with that? I'm not okay with that. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we have no say-so in this? See, this is the difference again about direct democracy and representative democracy. Direct democracy examples are the ballot measures, the ballot initiatives, right? Where there's a policy on the ballot and you vote for that policy in your state or your district, etc. That's direct democracy. What we have on the national level is that we have representatives that are supposed to represent their constituents in their districts. And they're supposed to make the decisions for us. And the problem is these representatives aren't making decisions that we want them to make. So when it comes to our tax dollars in this country, don't you think we should have a say-so? We should have some type of direct democracy where we actually get to vote and decide whether or not we want our tax dollars to be spent on funding these wars? This is why Biden got to go. You guys see, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican in the White House, if it's a Democrat in the White House. This is why these parties got to go. They both support the military industrial complex. So when people come to me with the lesser of two evils, the lesser of what evil? This is our money. Let's continue.
Dollars for the emergency need for the Taiwan military and the defense needs that we need to have. So since this is the first program that is adopted for Taiwan, apparently there's a urgent need to fill the defense need that Taiwan need to have probably in 3 to 5 years.
But we have urgent needs for the American people right here in our own country. Wouldn't you prefer for the people who tell me they're against universal health care, which I don't think most people are, but for the people who say, I don't want my tax dollars to go towards health care for everybody. I don't want my tax dollars to go towards, I don't know, some type of universal, the schools, right? Like the free public college. I don't want my tax dollars to go. Wouldn't you rather your tax dollars go towards providing health care for everyone in this country instead of going towards sending weapons to Taiwan? Think about that. Let's continue.
To meet the challenge from China. So I think the not only this is the first time that the foreign military financing program has been adopted by the United States on Taiwan, but also that reflect the kind of the urgency that the United States feel about the security situation surrounding the Taiwan Strait.
All right, Mr. Chung, also, what do you make of the timing? We all know that the Taiwan Strait continues to be plagued by tensions coming in from China, and not just the Taiwan Strait, but also the Indo-Pacific. Having said that, we also know it's a critical year as far as Taiwan's elections, upcoming presidential election is concerned. What do you make of the timing?
First of all, and everyone, including Taiwan, is very much aware of the Xi Jinping, his personal agenda, that due to the domestic issues that Xi Jinping has in China, especially like economic slowdown, the pressure on him on the issue of Taiwan, that he need to do something to showcase that he's legitimate to take the third term as the leader of China, that will be mounting much more. And so that people are looking at whether before year 2007 that Xi Jinping could be pressured or tempted to use military on Taiwan in order to solve what he called as a Taiwan issue.
So he's talking about pressure being used towards Xi Jinping, right? Well, I don't think there's any other obvious pressure being used towards him than sending weapons to Taiwan. Obviously, that's going to put some type of pressure. That sends a message, some type of pressure towards him that says, okay, it's time for me to respond. And if not, what do the people say? What do the people say? Like, are you just going to sit back and take this? The US government is sending weapons to Taiwan. Are you just going to sit back and let this happen? Think about this, people. Think about this. I feel like the US government, and by the way, it's Democrats and Republicans in DC that are okay with this, by the way. I feel like the US government is really smart in a way when it comes to foreign policy. You know why I say that? Because they have a way of having these countries, the people in these countries, turn on each other. Yes, Taiwan wants independence, but let's be real. The US government didn't de-escalate that situation either. They escalated that situation. They escalated that situation when Nancy Pelosi made that trip to Taiwan. When Ed Markey made that trip to Taiwan, they were sending a message. So here we have people that are part of one China, just to reiterate, pretty much ready to turn arms towards each other. And the US government sits back, collects the money, and claps and laughs. Terrible when you really think about it. What would have been the right thing to do? Stay out of it. Stay out of it. Think about this, guys. The reason why, again, this is such big news is because Taiwan, again, is not a sovereign nation. So the US government, this is a big deal because they're sending weapons to a sovereign nation, to a nation that's not a sovereign nation, or non-nation, excuse me. So they're sending weapons to them. That's why this is such a big deal. What the hell is happening in our government? We could have easily stayed out of this, but no. In my lifetime, I never met a president, never had a president that met a war that he didn't like. Trump didn't start any new wars, but Trump still bombed people too. But again, it's all about the money, all about the money.
And that means that we do not have much time to prepare for the possible conflict. So first of all, definitely there is a timing constraint that Taiwan needs to meet. And second, with the incoming election next year of the Taiwan presidential election, China also expressed its displeasure regarding a particular candidate who is now leading a poll and very much could win the election. So that the Chinese, its own personal and the pressure on Taiwan also could add up to the pressure that the attempted to use the military on Taiwan, that opportunity or that likelihood is actually increasing. Both of them attribute to the issue that the Taiwan need to prepare for its military and defense quickly to meet a challenge. And we are running against time. And the window probably we are talking about is less than 2 to 3 years.
So he said they urgently need these weapons. And I wanted you to hear that piece there about the window that he talked about. He said less than 2 to 3 years. So there is a possibility that Taiwan could be at war with China in less than 2 to 3 years. And if you think that the US government won't play a role in that, you're wrong. Nick was very vocal about this as well. Nick was really angry. And I want to go ahead and share this because Nick said the US government once again escalating with China by arming Taiwan. Is Biden trying to turn Taiwan into the next Ukraine? Listen to this from my comrade Nick from RBN.
So the Biden administration approved of the first ever foreign military financing arms deal with Taiwan. This is extremely significant because a foreign military financing deal is usually reserved for independent sovereign states. Now, this is a massive escalation on behalf of the United States against China because this is the United States once again violating the one China policy, which is crucial to maintaining diplomatic ties with China. Red line that China has drawn, and they warned U.S. repeatedly about this, is military cooperation between Washington and Taipei. Despite that, the United States continues to poke the bear, and then they pretend that China is being the aggressive ones.
And then the US government will throw their hands up in the air after the conflict has already started and say, well, I don't know why they're doing this. I don't know why they can't just get along. We don't know how we got to this point to begin with. They'll sit back and pretend like they had nothing to do with it when they've been escalating this all along.
President Biden in July sent $345 million worth of weapons to Taiwan using the same authority he uses to send weapons to Ukraine.
This is insane, you guys. This is insane. Think about it again. Ukraine, and I don't agree with the weapons and the aid that's being sent to Ukraine either. But if you wanted to defend it compared to Taiwan, Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Taiwan is not. Like, this is insane. This guy's got to get out of the White House. Like, I'm serious. Like, Biden has to go. He's going to get us all. Look, he's escalating us towards a World War III on two different fronts, whether it's Russia and Ukraine or it's China and Taiwan. This guy has got to go. It's a mess.
The United States is clearly trying to turn Taiwan to the next Ukraine, and I hope the Taiwanese people are smart enough to see through it. So you have the Biden administration poking the bear with China. The opposition party, led by maniacs like Vivek Ramaswamy, want us to go to war with China.
I told you. See, this is the thing. Both parties want to do this. Democrats and Republicans. They both want to do it. Vivek, we're going to talk about Vivek tonight. So we're going to get into that. Vivek also, he's against the money going to Ukraine. He's good on that issue. But just because someone is against this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, that doesn't mean they're against the conflict with China. And you'll notice this multiple times. When it comes to China and Taiwan, his message changes.
Over Taiwan. Listen to me. Taiwan is not our business. China is not our enemy. Imperialist neocons like Vivek Ramaswamy and Joe Biden are our true enemies. No war except class war.
No war except class war. Look at where we're heading. Leave these countries alone. Leave Taiwan alone. Leave China alone. This is the U.S. government's chance to get their hands involved into another conflict. How are we going to be involved in two at the same damn time? It's just, so you guys see what has happened here. I remember people applauding Joe Biden because they said he pulled us out of Afghanistan. This is great, even though I argued even back then there were still U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. And some people were lying to you, right? I also told you about the sanctions that were implemented on people in Afghanistan, that kids were starving because of the economic sanctions. A lot of people left that part out. They didn't want you to know about that. Anything to praise Joe Biden because they want you to continue to vote for him again. So people were applauding him for withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. But then this mofo got us involved in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So it's just, you just traded one country for another one. It's just, That's the thing. All this aid, billions of dollars going to Ukraine. Now you got weapons going to Taiwan. All this money that they claim the government doesn't have to help out the American people, that they claim the government doesn't have, has a limited amount of funds to help out people when it comes to a state like Hawaii. But they have billions of dollars when it comes to these wars because there is a profit. There's a return on that investment. They don't feel like using government spending to help the American people is actually giving the U.S. government a return on their investment. And I don't care. But I say, like I said before, Joe Biden has to go. This is a nightmare. Oh, by the way, keep in mind, our president still has not visited people in East Palestine, Ohio yet. You know why? There's no return on that investment. Those people voted for Donald Trump. See, he had to go to Hawaii. It's blue state. Terrible, terrible times. But I will continue to follow this story because, again, I agree with Nick that they're going to try to turn Taiwan into the next Ukraine. Hello, Anna says, hi, Sabby. I'm watching you from Brazil. I'm addicted since I've found you. Oh, that's so sweet. And welcome. Love all the international viewers. Shout out to Simply says, how are we going to war with China and they manufacture everything we need? This is the big question, right? It's the big question. But they're already trying to find other ways to make money and reference resources. Let me tell you something. I'm going to cover this story in detail on Sunday. Do you know Joe Biden right now is they're trying to privatize water in certain places? We're going to get into all of that Sunday. It's crazy what is happening under this administration. Teresa says the military industrial complex is having a high old time during the Biden years. Thank you, Aspen Fallen. China should send weapons to Texas separatists. That's interesting. And thank you, Regine, for the super sticker. Thank you very much. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Arms manufacturers struggle to supply Ukraine with enough ammunition is the title of the accompanying link. Where are you going to get the weapons from for Taiwan? That's the PBS Org News Hour. Thank you so much for that, Roger. Eric, if you have a chance to copy that and put that in the chat so people can look at that as well. And thank you for this tip as well. Well, we all knew that once we got out of Afghanistan, the arms industry most likely came to see him and said, you just cost us money, so you're going to have to find us something else to get into so we could keep the money train going. I think it's under my Arizona with the water. I think it's under my Arizona with the water. Oh, yes, with the privatizing the water. I'll get into that on Sunday.